Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're hailing from. Welcome to Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents. This is episode 26, Building a Home Gaming Server Using Podman. So, before we go any further, let me bring on my esteemed co-host. We didn't chase him off last time, so he's back with us today. Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Doing great. How you doing, Eric?
Oh, doing good, doing good. Had a week off. Got through the kind of the 2 days of, oh my gosh, I have all these emails, all these chats, all these things, and so now today it's kind of back to business as usual.
Yeah, I'm super excited for today's show and talking to our guest.
Yeah, let me bring him on.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Scott McCarty. Why don't you
I'm
introduce
out of the green
yourself?
room.
You are out of the green room, much to my much against my instincts. My instincts told me to just leave you back there, but it wouldn't be much of an interview if we left you in the green room. So why don't you introduce yourself? Tell folks what you do here at Red Hat, and then we'll introduce our topic.
Yeah, that's cool. I am a product manager for RHEL Server, and historically, I've been the product manager for RHEL Containers for like 3.5 years, and so this is a recent thing where I've now taken over RHEL Server. And product managers are people. I'm good with people. No, I am.
I have people skills.
I take the requirements from the customers to the engineers, and they're like, "You do that directly?" No, I have an assistant that does that. No, I don't. That's Office Space reference. But no, I talk to customers and talk to engineers and make sure things happen.
So what would you say you do here? So free PSA.
Each week
we
I
usually
do about an hour of work, actual real work.
So for those of you that are completely lost and confused, clearly you're not children of the 80s or 90s. If you work in technology, or if you work or used to work in an office, office space is required reading to be able to continue in your job. So that's our free public service announcement for this episode. Go watch Office Space. I watched it about a year into my first real IT job and was like, I think they filmed this in our office because we have all of these people.
Yeah, I've joked that every kid should have to watch that, like when they're graduating college.
All right, so it took us less than 4 minutes to digress. So I think that's some kind of a record. Well, one last thing I wanted to point out was I did represent Scott. I wore my container shirt today just for you.
Oh, good.
All right, so today I wanted to we're in December. We just came back from Thanksgiving break, so I wanted to do something a little bit different. Red Hat Enterprise Linux is near and dear to my heart and has been for a couple of probably about 15 years or so now, and so I wanted to talk about something that we haven't really addressed on the show, but I wanted to also have some fun with it. We're kind of towards the end of the year, so let's do something fun. So why not talk about containers from a home network perspective? Why not talk about Podman? So we kind of iterated on this a little bit, and we came up with. I kind of want to relive my early days as a systems administrator. So when I bought my first server, okay, it was a desktop with a couple of extra drives, but my first home server, it's like I need to do more sysadmin type things. I can't really test on work systems because that will just break things. So I bought my own system, set it up at home. It's like, okay, great. Now what? So a friend of mine had gotten me hooked on Minecraft, and so those two worlds kind of collided really quick. It was, hey, guess what? You can actually run your own Minecraft server, and it runs under Linux. So my first home lab project was to spin up a Minecraft server here at home, and so that's kind of been kind of my hello world approach to any time I do something is instead of getting a web server, it's can I run Minecraft on it. So when I started learning Docker, when I started learning Docker Compose, and then when I moved to RHEL 8 and moved to Podman, it's like can Podman run Docker or can Podman run Minecraft? Um, So that was kind of my trip down memory lane. So Scott, I wanted to ask you what is Podman? How does that relate to Docker? Just kind of give us the basic overview.
Yeah. Real quick, before I do that, I was going to do a shout out to, I believe, I don't know how to say your name. I believe it is Shantanu, but we've been debating on Twitter about whether containers even matter. So it's been actually fun. So yeah, I can see you, but sadly I can't respond in the text. So that's why I had to do this verbally. So I guess you have to create an account before you can respond to the text.
So you can actually the great point. Piece of housekeeping: we have a Discord server. I'll get the invite link posted into the chat. You can also join us on Twitch or on YouTube. So if you just pull up this video, you can post as your YouTube account, or if you're a Twitch person, you can respond to the chat in Twitch chat. With that being said, as we go through this, feel free to post your questions. Feel free to interject as we go through this. You know, this is we're the ones on video right now, but this content's really about all of you. So feel free, post your questions, and get involved.
Now I understand Restream. I see that it has a little icon next to it. So like those are all YouTube people responding.
Yep,
that's cool.
The joy of being a technologist, you find cool little things everywhere.
This is how do they do this web stuff? No, so good segue into Podman. So Podman, when did we start Podman? I don't know, 4-ish years ago. I was in the room with Dan Walsh and Matt Hicks, and we were, I don't know, we were Red Hat stuff, which usually involves like giant meetings where like everyone starts fighting. And back in the day, the old school Red Hat, where like we would just like get together before the pandemic, and we would like all vigorously debate. We didn't fight per se. Like we're all nice to each other. We just are very passionate about our feelings about things. And like Daniel Reek and Dan Walsh you have to get loud. And we were like, well, what should we do? Blah, blah, blah. And we came up with cryo. We came up with the idea of cryo, which was essentially what had happened is we kind of looked at Docker and what it was, and we were contributing heavily to it. And there were some challenges with the community and things, which I don't want to bring up old bad blood, but like there were some challenges with the community and some of the things we wanted to do. And we had a very different vision about, like, we viewed the container tools as a part of the operating system. And like there's all these, if you look at what a container is, it's essentially a user space definition of a bunch of tools in the operating system. And so it's like you fire up a process, but here's how you fire it up. You add these security constraints. You mount this file system, but here's how you do it. You do it with this special stuff. You do these links, you do overlay FS, like all these different ways that you basically take primitives in the operating system, be them files or ports or process controls like SE Linux or setcomp, and things like that, or image layers, and the way you merge them together. Again, you're using things like overlay FS, or at the time we were using LVM mappings basically to do it back in the day. And so like we just looked at, like, we viewed it as like flour, sugar, eggs, and water and how to make a cake. And the Docker vision was kind of more like this all-in-one thing is there. These concepts about portability and what they meant and how everything should pull images from Docker Hub. And there was this, it was at the end of the day, it was kind of, there's just a fundamental difference the way we looked at like this as part of the OS, and they looked at us as that was the new layer that you should like program to. So long story short, we looked at how could we build something that we thought, like, for example, aligned better to Kubernetes. And so we built cryo. And so cryo basically versions exactly with Kubernetes and has the exact features in it that whatever version of Kubernetes needs. So like if Kubernetes 1.17 came out, we had all the features we needed in cryo to manage that, you know, to basically work perfectly with that version. And we've always done that since the beginning. I think we started maybe 1.10-ish all the way to like 1.21 or wherever we're at now. The dot versions of Kubernetes have become less exciting as they've gotten larger. And so I don't stay as up to date. But then we looked at, okay, so we looked at cryo and we went, oh, that's pretty cool. even before that, we had looked at creating a utility called Scopio that just was able to move images around. It was a very simple concept where you could just like move container images around from like one registry to another. And the idea with Docker is you had to pull to the local stores and then push back to another registry. And it just seemed hokey. You're like, why can't I just copy from that registry to that registry? These are just fancy file servers. I should just be able to copy from here to here. Like if you're in Unix, you can just, CP or rsync something from one NFS server to another based on the file system, or you can use like, what's the program I use? Oh my gosh, I forget the name of it. But there's this one that I use that's cloud-based. You can basically copy from like Dropbox to pCloud. Rclone is freaking awesome. You can copy from anything to anything. And there's no concept. You don't have to pull it down and then push it out. You just copy from here to there. So we looked at it again. We just viewed it as like Unix tools. And then eventually we had built Scopio, we had built Cryo, and we were like, we need something that's like, instead of a client server model like Docker is, where you're like, you connect to it and it's a server and it's very like Web 2.0 world-ish thinking, like web services and all this magic. We were like, honestly, the old school stuff here is better to just have this like fork exec model, because that's what the Docker server was doing anyway. And so we looked at it and we went, well, let's just have a fork exec model. And then there was a whole bunch of work going on in this community called Rootless, which was this other project that was these technical guys. Akira, I think, is one of the main guys. And there's a whole bunch of other people that are working on this concept of running containers as a regular user. And they're working on weird network stacks to do things. And we were like, oh, wow, this fork exec model works really well with this idea of running it as a regular user. And so then, like, I would say that's when got rid of the daemon, ran it as a regular user, and Podman, the true like Podman, was born then, like when we were like, this is our niche. Like, this is where like this really shines. Like, you just run a utility in your home directory and it uses storage in your home directory and it uses ports you can control, and it can weave together the parts of the operating system that you control, which is exactly what Unix should be, to then manage a process in a way that's very convenient using an image-based format. And so that is a super long-winded like history of it, but like that's pretty much how we got to where Podman is today and like what it is. And it's essentially a command line utility that has an interface that looks very, very similar to Docker, because they had a great interface. I mean, it's a very elegant way of running. I call it the best proof of concept ever built. Like, it was amazing, like when you looked at it. But then the back end, you're like, I don't know if I really like this back end thing that's going on here behind the scenes. But the interface was very elegant. And so I give them very much props for that.
So one thing you mentioned that really jumped out at me was this concept of rootless. So let's dive into that a little bit. How is that different than Docker? How does that what advantages does that bring?
So by default, Docker runs as root. And like I mentioned, this rootless sort of experimentation, I call it like almost like a separate project, was some stuff that was going on the side that there were people looking at doing rootless stuff, they called it. And there's even a rootless project. Docker looked at how to integrate it in their stuff as well. But the problem is like, if you run a daemon rootless in your home directory, that's still like hokey, right? Like it becomes very obvious that that's hokey when you run it in your home directory. You're like, oh, I could just have 62 users on the system. I'll just run 62 daemons all running as these different people, and that's how I'll start containers. Like that falls apart really quickly on any shared user system. So like HPC, that falls apart. It also just, there's this thing in technology, and this is hard to explain to marketing people, but you just know when stuff is right. You're like, it's just right. It feels right. And that's what you want. Like, I don't want a daemon running in my home directory. So like, historically, Docker just had a single daemon running as root, and that was great. Again, it was a great POC. Like, it was a proof of concept. It worked great. You're like, this is amazing. We put the proof of concept in production all over the place as root, which was terrifying. But that's just how technology is. You adopt things because they're convenient. And then Podman, on the other hand, you can run it as root or you can run it as user. It doesn't really matter. It's just a utility. It's like Bash. Like, you can run Bash as a regular user or as root. There's no reason you can't do that. And I call Podman is just Bash for containers. Like, it's got a slightly different interface. You don't interact with it like Bash. You don't type commands on it or in it. But you run, it has the Docker interface basically from a CLI perspective, but it's like Bash. It's just a utility that you run, whether it's root or not. So that's the main difference. It's like a client server model versus just some utility run like Bash.
So Scott, one question I had is, we hear a lot about Kubernetes, OpenShift, all the time. Where does Podman fit into all that?
Yeah, we view Podman. So So this goes back to an article I just wrote on Network World recently, where I talked about like why did Docker change the world? So like Docker changed the world because like PaaS was. So I go back to like 2008. People forget this history, and I get always frustrated. Actually, I was joking. This is again I was debating with Shantanu with about like some of these things. I just seen this movie time and time again, and I see the movie over and over again, like these debates, and they're just patterns. So like one of them is should everybody's been saying that everything's going to the cloud forever, and certain things are for sure. Also, a lot of server workloads are going to the cloud. I don't disagree, but there's still a huge cadre. Like 95% of developers like to run things locally on their desktop. Like what's the first thing you do if you go to learn a new programming language? Like I fart around, I like bring something local, and I want to like do my inner loop development locally. And like Docker knows that, the company Docker knows that, I know that, Red Hat knows that. I mean, a lot of people in Red Hat know that, although there's debates in Red Hat because we're a big company. There are times where like VDI, for example, makes sense. Like that's the same debate in virtual machines, right? Like does VDI work? Like VDI is really elegant for certain solutions, but it still feels better in a lot of scenarios to have a VM locally. And I'd say the argument is exactly the same with like Kubernetes versus Podman. Like Podman's kind of the thing you run locally. It works really well in a development environment. You can like do your inner loop development very quickly. We're adding features like even being able to run Kubernetes YAML locally. We're extending features to basically run this on on Mac and Windows. A lot of people don't know we've been working on a patch behind the scenes to do the Podman machine stuff. That if you've seen the Mac version of this, where you just type like Podman machine init, Podman machine start, and you have a virtual machine running on a Mac that basically runs Podman, and you can just use your Podman utility to connect into that VM and do everything very similar to Docker Desktop. We have Podman for Mac working pretty well today, although we've had some bugs and things. But the is elegant. Like this is one of the hard parts when you're like early in code. You can once you see the whole thing hanging together, you're like, oh, this cathedral will be beautiful once we like actually get all the glass in and everything. But like the glass is not in on all these things. So like don't use these in production. Don't think you're going to roll this out to 10,000 developers today. But the bones are there and it's really elegant. So like you can run 2 commands and run Podman in Mac, and we have a patch in the works that should be out literally almost any day. To do the same thing on Windows, where you just type Podman machine init, Podman machine start, and magic happens behind the scenes. And next thing you know, you can type Podman run, and it just starts running containers. And it looks like they're all running locally, but they're actually running in a VM in Mac and Windows with a Linux VM behind the scenes, a Fedora VM. So if you look, we're basically trying to make Podman like really replace that like desktop use case. I'd say is a huge chunk of like our 3-year vision. And then I would say like single node servers, where you're like, I don't want to like fart around with Kubernetes because there's too much. It's just like I have a big honking Oracle database and like a web app, and you're like, in that scenario, I don't really want the Oracle database restarting 42 million times, and I just want to be able to like fire these 2 things up with systemd and let them run forever, just like I did with processes. But I want the efficiency of container image management, because like container images are still really elegant in that like they're well defined when you use a Docker file or a container file. They're easy to share. They're easy to upgrade. You're like, oh, let me do from rel 9 and then see what breaks and like rebuild this thing. And now I can build it out of band. Once I get it to work right, I could just like go from rel 8 to rel 9 and just like update the app and swap it out. And, the data is all the same. And so like, it just makes upgrades, downgrades, rollbacks. You don't have to do things at 2 a.m. anymore. You can do them at, 4 p.m. Before you go home, and you're like, oh, that just worked. If not, I just roll back. I don't care. I've actually experienced this. I've been running my blog and my request tracker and my wiki in containers for about a year and some change. I think a year and a half. And like, I'm going to be honest with you, I still get that feeling every now and then when I go to upgrade. I'm like, I haven't touched this thing in a long time. I'm like, do I really want to mess with this? And then I'll top type Podman build. I even have some scripts to like rebuild the image. I'll just run the script. I'm like, okay, that all worked. I'm like, let's restart and see what happens. And it works. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Like, it's so much better than like when you would have to like back up all the data and you're like, oh, let me back this up and do all this crap and fart around and then like try to upgrade and then it would break halfway and you're farting around. Now, if it breaks, I'm like, I'll just mess with it later. I can do the rebuild later because it's just a container. And so I don't have to run the new version of the image. I'd say those are that single node server use case and that desktop, Mac, Windows, Linux use case are probably the 2 biggest places I think Podman's awesome, because you can, like, say you're running OpenShift in production, you can bring that Kubernetes YAML back from prod, run it dev, run the whole app. It'll fire up 3, 4, 5 containers, whatever it takes to build the app. change your little part, test it locally, do the commit, let it go through CI/CD, roll it out in prod, and it works back on Kubernetes in prod. And when you have a scale problem, absolutely Kubernetes is the most elegant tool to do that. But when you don't have a scale problem, a lot of the times it is really elegant. It's just have a simple tool that's just like a yum Podman install Podman. That was a lot of words.
It was a lot of words, and you did get a question that I wanted to surface from Joshua in the chat. Yes, is that on M1 Max or just on Intel?
So I'm not sure where we're at with M1 support. I think we're very close. Like, I don't know right off the top of my head. I know a few weeks ago we were saying it was only a week away, and like we've been dilly-dallying, figuring out. There basically what was happening is it was a dependency problem. There's we're using like I forget what they're using, libvirt or I forget what they're using behind the scenes, but there was some patch they had to make and then had to get into brew, and then like so there's like dependency chain problem where it's just blocked. There's an actual patch and this works, and we've done it on like M1 Max and we've gotten it working locally. We just don't have the public version working all the way yet. I don't think it may actually be working, but I think I would have heard somebody squealing about it. But Ashley on our team worked on it. She's got really elegant, like it works really well. We just got to get the patches out there in brew basically. And then that highlights something longer term. I think brew might not be the answer for the Red Hat way of doing it. We just want it in brew today because it's a very fast inner loop iteration process compared to like download this thing from redhat.com. But I am very much investigating like what is the download this thing from redhat.com. So like you SSL connect to redhat.com, download a thing, install it on your Mac, and the same process happens where you do a Podman machine in it, Podman machine start, but it's probably rel bits and it's, you know, sanctioned from Red Hat, and you go from this entity and you transfer it to you, and it's just those two entities instead of like going and messing. We've had some customers say like, we can't download stuff out of brew. That's crazy talk. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. I think brew might be crazy talk long term, but it works good for now.
So whenever I've talked about Podman over the last few years, I would say the question that always comes up is Docker Compose. Can you tell us about what can you do with Podman and Docker Compose? How does that work? Is there anything new?
Maybe. Let me see if should I share my screen? Hold on. I just tweeted about something about this. Let me bring up in a link. Where is it at? Yeah, here we go. Actually, I don't know. Do you want to? Oh, good. All right, you're letting me share my screen. Yep. Here, let's look at this. So we just published this literally like yesterday, the day before. So this is my favorite table. We worked on this behind the scenes a lot. So would you
mind blowing up your text for us?
Oh yeah. How about that? Can you see that better?
It's a little bit better, yeah. I'm not as young as I used to be. I just had a birthday last week, so I'm going blind.
Oh yeah, no worries. I feel your pain. So I try to break this table down in like 5 different things here. So this Podman Compose world is more complex than what people realize. Like, so I kind of highlight here, like in RHEL, we support the Podman socket / API. So, excuse me, as a Podman, well, whatever. Nowadays, the Podman API is amazing, and it's pretty darn Docker compatible. I'd say we're at like 99%. There's just like certain few little network things and things that can't be compatible because of the way the underlying tech works. But we're even working on fixing a lot of that. But bottom line is we support the Podman socket API. So like if there's a tool that talks to this Podman socket API and it breaks, the API breaks in some way to where the Docker compatibility doesn't work, we pretty much consider that a bug and we try to fix it. So that's the first layer that you need to think about. Is like, okay, so when you run basically Podman has a system subcommand and you can basically fire up a socket. There's like a socket and you run it as a service. Now, you can run this as root or as non-root, just like I mentioned. You can run a daemon in your home directory if you want. Systemd can actually do this. Again, it's not the most elegant. I don't like it, but it's what you got to do to be Docker compatible if there's a tool that's looking for an API. So you've got to have an API socket. So we support that. The next layer up, though, is people go, oh, well, is Docker Compose support? And I go, well, do you even really need Podman Compose? And so here, let me kube-play container file. So this is kind of the next layer up. I go, well, do you really need that? Like, could you just do this? So like we've added some new features to Podman where we're like, can you just use Kubernetes YAML instead? Can you do a play kube and then like use the Kubernetes YAML and then do a kube play down? And we may actually change this interface because we got some complaints about the UX. But for now, single command down, single command up, that's pretty cool. Like remove the whole thing. Like you're getting the bones of an inner loop similar to Podman or I'm sorry, Docker Compose, where it's just Docker Compose up, Docker Compose down, except that you're defining it with Kubernetes YAML instead of Compose. And to me, the advantage of that is you can go back and forth between dev and prod really easily. Because if kube is prod, you can go back to your desktop by just like grabbing the kube out of Kubernetes, the kube YAML, and then just running it locally. So that's the next stop on the do we support Docker Compose train. And then the next stop is like, okay, well, there's this other thing called Podman Compose. What is that? And we go, is it supported in RHEL? No, not really. We don't support it. You'd have to go get this utility yourself. This works. It's tested upstream. It's part of the containers project. This team really works hard to make it compatible with Podman. What it does is it actually uses the Podman CLI, so you don't have to have a daemon running. So there's some advantage there. It has some other things where it can do some speed, where it can copy things and do some things because there's no socket, so it doesn't have to copy data up through a pipeline. It just does fork exec, so it has direct access to data. So there's some pluses and minuses. It may have some compatibility issues with Docker Compose a little bit, but it works mostly with Compose. It's an interesting project, but again, ship it as part of RHEL because we don't really sanction it as the thing to do. We kind of like really think this is probably the long-term solution, but we still want to unblock this. So if you want to bring your own Podman Compose and it works with your Compose files, great. The next level is like Docker Compose 1.0, which is a Python script. We go, yeah, that works. We test it. We actually test it upstream. It's part of our CI/CD. We make sure that this works. If you bring your own Docker Compose 1, it should work. If it doesn't work, we're pretty much going to consider it a bug because it's probably a bug between the Docker Compose. If it's a bug in the socket API because something's changed in Docker Compose and then it breaks something, we'll fix it. If it's a problem in Docker Compose, obviously you're on your own. You'd have to go figure that out. But it's an upstream project, so I'm sure you could work with the community to fix that. Docker Compose 2 is not supported either, but it doesn't work. So the problem with Docker Compose 2 is it is like, I believe it's a Golang binary, if I remember right. And it also uses package kit and some other stuff. It basically fires off this sort of like sub API inside the Docker socket and uses package kit. And so like, we're still working on this. Like what Builda itself does support a lot of the package kit things that Docker Compose 2 wants. And so we see a path pretty clearly to how like we'll be able to support it with the socket API. We won't need build kit or any of that stuff to make this work. It'll just work built into Podman because Podman vendors in Builda, and so it can do everything Builda can do. So we see a path to making this work, adding it to our CI/CD and making it work, but it doesn't work. Now, warning, these three options are not supported on RHEL, but they'll probably work, and we test them, and if it's a problem with the socket API, then we'll fix it. So like we tried to be as flexible as we could with this and unblock people, but then still send them down the direction that we think is like the longer term solution. So it's a much more complex question than it sounds.
Yeah, that was a great answer. Yeah, that was very cool. One other thing I've been reading a little bit about is Podman on Podman, and this has kind of blown my mind a little bit. So can you talk about like what are some of the use cases? Well, first of all, what is Podman on Podman, and then why would I want to do that?
Yeah, so first off, let me show you what Podman on Podman is. Let's go out here to Red Hat Universal Base Image. Here, I can make my screen bigger for Eric since he thinks he's older than me, even though he's not. And let's go to components, and you'll see. So this is Red Hat Universal Base Image. This is basically our freely redistributable container image toolkit, if you will. It's a whole bunch of things. It's a bunch of different container images. It's some Yum repositories. It's a whole bunch of things that basically make containers easy on RHEL. If you look at this, so if you type in Podman, you'll see that there's actually a Podman container image. So this is a standalone image that you can basically run with Podman on the host if you want. And it's its own version. So like you can see here, this is like the Docker file or container file that builds it. And it does like, does some magic in here to make it easier, make them run better. But at the end of the day, basically what it is a DNF install, and it basically installs, Podman and crun and some other things that makes this work inside of a container. So the idea here is that like, okay, there's times I want to use Podman because it has some cool feature. I want to run it on some CI/CD system somewhere, but the CI/CD system only supports Docker. You're like, well, no problem. You just run Podman in Docker. Sometimes you're like, oh, I want to do some cool thing with Podman. It does some weird stuff I need. Cool. You can run it in Kubernetes. So you can run Podman in Kubernetes as a container inside of Kubernetes. Another scenario that I see is people are like, oh, I have this old version of Podman or Docker. We can't change because of blah, blah, blah. Corporate standards, whatever reason. We're stuck. We're using RHEL 7 and we need Podman 3.4 or Podman 3.3.1. And you're like, well, that's not going to happen because we're not going to update RHEL 7. But RHEL 8 container images are supported on RHEL 7. So now you can just run Podman in a container on RHEL 7 and get access to the latest Podman, and it works. Those kinds of scenarios, basically. I'd say Podman on Podman unlocks all these like edge cases that are just really irritating. And you're like, I just want access to this latest one. I want it to work. Or maybe the newer version breaks something and you're like, I just need to use the older version, but we have the newer version installed on the host. You can just like run the older version. So it kind of like time and space, it unlocks you. Like that's kind of the magic of containers. And so running Podman in Podman unlocks time and space between the different versions of Podman and or Docker and or Kubernetes. And you can basically run Podman in that. And so UBI makes this completely freely distributable and usable however you want. So you can go use the UBI version of Podman. You can run it in Cirrus CI or whatever online CI/CD provider you want as a container, and as long as there is some challenges where running a container in a container does require privilege. So just a heads up, it will break in some scenarios where you do need privilege a lot of the time of some kind. But Dan Walsh has a great article on Podman in Podman. And if you Google that, I think I could show you how to use Podman inside of a container. And he also has one, and Urvashi. They wrote these articles that are really deep and show you a lot of this in gory detail. So if you really want to understand what's going on when you run a container in a container and when you need privilege and how you need privilege, I would recommend checking out this article. And then one other thing, a root, I call it root inside and outside the container. This is another one I would recommend if you need to understand like what is going on when Podman and when you use a root inside out or inside or outside the container, and when you use a user inside and outside the container. I think these are good articles. So I'd recommend. This little table is like a cheat sheet for your like, oh, I'm root outside the container, and then I run Podman, I'm inside, and then it gets inception. I could like create like a whole table of this of like running root outside the container, running root inside the container, then running Podman as root inside the container, which runs another container as non-root, and like you can get as inception level deep as you want. I probably need to create the next version of this table, which makes your brain hurt.
Yeah, I took that table and made that a video on that too. That's out on the Red Hat YouTube. That has the same information that Scott presented in a video format. If you want to see an overview of how all this works.
Yeah, that is freaking awesome. I forgot to bring that up. Yeah, I remember when you created that and I saw that and I was like, I am not as good at videos as you. I'm like hardcore blogger. Like I'm Gen X old school. Like I just write blogs. I need other people to do cool videos like you because I just don't make as good of videos.
So this is why I brought Scott on the show today, because I just sit back and give him a question and let him talk for 20 minutes.
I can answer pretty much any question.
But I told him before we brought him on the show, I told him there's a catch. We spend the first 30 minutes talking about the topic, but then you got to put your money where your mouth is. And I sent a challenge your way. So let's pull up the terminal and let's see this stuff in action.
Yeah, this is where I joke about like how millennials want to see other people like play video games and type commands and things. It's like very strange to me, but it's cool. Yeah, so I went out and set up for this. I think you can see my screen here. I'll show you. I have a Linode. I did some hacky things that are funny that I'm not saying these are supported at all, like just a warning, but I do have to brag about this because it's pretty cool. So I basically imported RHEL 7 and RHEL 8 images out in Linode, and then I can like deploy from these, which is pretty cool. Not supported at all because again, Linode's not supported, but I still think this is cool. And so I basically went out here and deployed this bad boy in their US East data center. And then I am logged in over here. So I just added some DNS for this guy and we're out here. And if you look, this is like a RHEL 8 server. It has Podman 3.3.1. And we were like, okay, so now we have an IP address, we have a RHEL server, we have Podman, and this is where I get off into uncharted territory. I'm like, I don't even understand Minecraft. I mean, I understand Minecraft. Like, I don't understand why people play it. Like, I understand why. Like, I don't understand all. No, I joke. I get it. But we're gonna try to run it now, and I've never tried to run it. Definitely not in Rel. Definitely not with Podman. And I went out and I started looking at this kind of this tutorial, and I was like, okay, I like blogs, and this guy or gal seems pretty dialed in. This looks like a pretty impressive script here that like seems like I wouldn't want to run this on like my box, but since it's like a Linode I just set up, I'm like, we could try this and see if it works. And it looks like it uses a bunch of crazy environment variables to set all kinds of things inside of the container to like make it run right. And
You wanna zoom in on that?
oh yeah. Here, let me zoom in on this. Yeah, so this blog is apparently this guy figured out how to run Minecraft in Podman, and he blogged about it back in 2019. So now we're in 2021. So we're what, 2 years later? This guy James Young is awesome. He got this to work like 2 years ago, and so apparently you like set the root blah blah blah, some min max RAM, some TZ stuff. Looks like it might be in Australia because I saw down here in this looks like it might be setting Australia TZ data. That's terrifying. Let's see if that breaks on our system. I don't know what'll happen. And I don't know what all these things are. But so I was thinking, let's try to run this, and then let's see if it breaks or runs, and then let's try to fix it if it doesn't work. Is kind of what I'm thinking. So I had copied it out here ahead of time, just to like get it here. But pod UID ID. I wonder if do I need to do that? I wonder if I need to do that. That's interesting. Min max RAM. I think there was something in here about passwords, I thought. Wasn't there? We should try to change those if there are. Is there anything in here about passwords? I thought there was some kind of password. Maybe there's no Maybe there's not. I don't know much about running a Minecraft server, so I don't know if there's passwords or not. I assume there would be.
Well, like all technology answers, it depends. Do you want to be able to moderate your Minecraft server? Do you want to give certain friends like moderator privileges and give yourself like admin privileges? Because there's nothing worse than giving a friend of yours admin privileges, building this beautiful castle out in the middle of nowhere, and then your friend coming in and setting creative mode and deleting your castle essentially, just
That's
because
what I
they
was
think they're
thinking,
being
like,
funny.
Yeah, this is like basically like somebody could screw up your like Lego castle, like, and you're like, I don't want that. Yeah, I don't know. I was just analyzing this a little bit before I run it, but now let's try and run it. This thing looks interesting. I don't know what this is. This looks like it might be pulling in some kind of data, like the version of the
Server mod. Yeah, that's a good question.
Minecraft server. So I thought this was interesting. Let's see what happens. Let's run this. Let's get brave. What can we break, right? I mean, I could just delete this thing. So, oh, I lied a little bit. I did try to run it once. And so it let's do this. Podman images. It apparently did pull this image down, and then that's like a little under a gigabyte. But then this happens, and I don't know what the heck any of this stuff means. Let's see. So this gets set. Some mods and mod packs may require Java 8. So blah blah blah. Looking for blah blah. Oh, here we go. Here's our error. It is the weird data thing.
Okay, so that's a server mod. So we may.
Yeah, should we down? Well, and we could probably go find this bad boy and download a new version, but then it might not work with whatever's in here. So I probably will. So let me see what the heck. Let's Google this. I'm guessing this is the name of it.
I mean, worst case, we can go out to ITZG's Docker page and just pull down his command. It's not nearly as complex.
That's okay. That's good. But this looks like all the mods. All the mods. Oh, so this is like some super mod like theme pack type thing that apparently you install. Ooh, okay. So 2.0. I wonder if should we just download the exact version?
Sure, why not?
What the heck was it? 1.5.2. 1.5.2. That looks right. Let's see what happens when I click on this. Download. Actually, you know what I
we
should
got the
do?
countdown.
I should do a dub. Where's the countdown?
It expired.
Click here if it doesn't work. Oh, there we go. So now we should have this bad boy local. Let's see. Let's go into downloads. So this is on my local laptop. I see. So let's do an SCP all the mods zip to root at rel85.dc3.crunchtools.com/root. Oh, look at that. Magic. Now we just got to rename it, and we got to put it in /data directory, I think. So this guy clearly didn't follow the Linux hierarchical file standards, because this should be in C/data or /SRV data. That's what I meant. I'm anal about that. Why am I the only person that puts data in the right place on Linux servers? So annoyed. All right, so let's name it this bad boy, right? Wait a minute. Move all the data to /data, and let's name this guy. So there we go. So now we have this all the mods plugin pack, if you will. Now let's go back to my home directory and let's run this thing again. See what happens. Oh, that's right, actually. Podman. So what it say is it names the container when it fires up, and so basically we just got to kill that. So we'll do a podman kill -a, and we'll do a podman rm -a. This just kills and everything, and then we'll run this again, and it'll start from scratch. And not found. What do you mean not found? All right, let's try this.
So is that? I think that may be /data within the container image.
Yeah. So on root/backup/data. Where is it at? So let's go all the mods. Yeah, this is interesting. So where the heck do we put it? Maybe it's in our home directory. Maybe we just put it here. Pack. This is where I usually don't do this, but let's do this. Data/ I think I'm smarter, and I think every now and then I can pull off something like this. So again, I'm going to kill it all. Start one more time. Nope, didn't work. All right, let's actually look at it and figure out where the heck it's actually wanting it from. Oh, so /instance, root /instance/data. So let's try to create an instance directory.
Just so everybody knows, I'm going to pay for this later in our next staff meeting, because Scott and I work pretty closely nowadays, so he'll get me back. But for the moment, I'm just enjoying giving him a hard time.
Oh, I'm like deep in this. I'm like now. Really? This is what you like seeing.
So the
-e. Let's do CF server. Huh, okay. That's strange.
So yeah,
it has to be where the data directory is the problem.
The chat brings up a good point. Do we have $root defined as anything?
Yeah, let's see what. That's a very good point. Root. Let's see what. Server root /instance/feed the beast. Yeah, why do we have that? Do /root. This is a throwaway server. But then that means that data It says /root/instance, which is interesting because there's an instance directory in the instance. Oh, that would be strange, but that's all right. Let's try this. That should work. There we go. I forgot you can just do an RM because it dies. It keeps dying, so still nothing.
The other suggestion is to just take the mod pack out of the configuration.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. Except I don't know how the heck to do that. If we
Probably
delete
just
this,
take out that -e. I would assume.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Wait, server root equals $root/root
/instance. So it should be /root/instance, right? And it should put it in data. /root/instance. I feel like that should work. It's in here.
Then do a pwd. Okay.
Let's try this. Actually, let's do this because I am a bash ninja. I will figure this out. Okay, I'm not as much of a bash ninja as I used to be. There we go. See what the hell this thing says. Where is it doing the -e ATM blah blah blah? Where the heck is it at? Here it is. Sesh that. But let's go up here. What's it doing? So server root /server/podman. That's that.
Yeah, it showed /serve/podman.
Yeah.
Being defined.
Where the heck's it getting at that? Where's it getting that at?
That script must suggest some variables up at the top.
Yeah, it must. That's interesting. Oh, there we go. Root. Duh.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. What was I thinking? Oh, I screwed up server root. Oh, no. I screwed that up. So let's get that back from that thing. I just realized I did this wrong. You're right. So server root. Let's fix this because this is probably inside the container.
Thank you to Tony Harris who sent that in via Google Chat.
I was not reading that at all because I'm, you know how when you're doing it live, you're like, I'm doing it live.
Right.
There we go. Now I think this will work. We'll see.
Got root. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, you know what?
Server is root.
You know what they say about doing live demos. The more people that are watching you type, the harder it becomes.
Using a server version of the FTB mod pack.
Yeah, let's just get rid of the mod pack. Let's
get rid of it.
Comment.
We've given up
that out.
All the whatevers. You're done. All the mods.
Yeah, that -ecf_server. If we just take out that line, we should be good.
Run it again. Oh, it doesn't like that. I don't know why you don't like that, but you're going to get deleted.
Yep. I didn't think commenting out a line, even if you put in the carriage return.
Server mod is required to be set.
Oh gosh.
I know.
All right. We got 10 minutes left, so I'm gonna help bail you out here.
I know. Oh well. We tried. Now I have to mess with this. It doesn't matter because I didn't like this anyway, so I guess I can talk about what I didn't like about this anyway. I didn't like that this is running whatever this where's it at? Where's the Podman run? So this all the way down here. This ITZG Minecraft server latest. I think it's built on some kind of Debian distribution. And I was like, to make me happy, I would need to build this on UBI and or Fedora, and then I would be happy.
There you go. Yeah, let's package and support Minecraft servers as a UBI container image.
Yeah, exactly. I'll put that in Quay or my have an auto rebuild. I'm sad. So how long? All right, so we got 9 minutes. I tried for like 20-ish minutes.
I wanted to give you a hard time, but I was expecting us to pull through. But we should have just gone to the Docker image page because the original command to kick off this particular container is much less complicated.
I mean, we can do that still. We still have 9 minutes.
Oh, he's rising to the challenge here.
I mean, I'm just saying. So oh yeah, this should work. Way easier. Script is so awesome though. I wanted to make it work. Oops. Now let's see what happens here. This thing fails in some wacky way. Nope, it actually worked. All right, so now let's see. So it's this port. You see that guy. But now let me give you the IP address.
Yeah, let me.
So let's see if this bad boy works. Oh, you know what I need to do? I'll bet that won't work. Podman kill -a. Podman RM -a. Let's get rid of that guy. Let's do this. Dash. Oh, actually, that probably will work. Yeah, that'll probably work. All right, let's do it again. I was thinking I would do net equal host. I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. For a split second, I was thinking, oh, the IP address, blah blah blah. But then I'm like, no, that'll work. Just the port should work.
Is your firewall open?
It should be.
Okay.
We shall see. See. Yeah, we should be good. All right. So wait, let me make sure you guys have that IP address again. So this is the IP address. I don't have a client, so I'm hoping you do.
Yep, I got that shared. What's that IP address?
It is 55.79 at 128.161.
Uh-oh. Connection refused. Is Firewall D running on that system?
I don't believe so. Known operation. Hold on. Double checking. Nope. And my IP tables looks wide open. Interesting. What port did you try to connect to?
Let's try that. Let's specify the port. Minecraft should know to.
Oh, it doesn't show it's running.
Well, that would probably be part of the problem.
Yeah, that one would think that would be it. Let me try this again. What happened? Why did it die?
Was it 25565, something like that?
Up, it dies for some reason. Let me do this. Podman. Let's see what's going on here. It is not running. Oh, E equal EULA equal true. Okay, so you gotta apparently you gotta like agree to the terms of service nowadays. Everything has terms of service. I'm gonna fail. Hold on, give me 1 second. I gotta kill it, and it'll work now. There we go. Podman. Yes. Yep, it's running now. Now you should be able to get it.
Okay.
25.565.
And yeah, let's 25565. All right, and drum roll.
Drum roll.
Oh, hold on. Let me refresh here. Of course, it's looking for my home server too. Is that IP address correct? 4579 128 161.
Let me double check. 4579 128 161.
Okay.
That looks right. Old. Hey, what does that mean? That looks good. No.
Oh.
Ow.
Maybe.
I don't think you could have cut this any closer, Scott.
I know. We started at 34 after the hour, so like we're only at minute 22 right now, so we're doing pretty good.
We spent 20 minutes screwing around with somebody else's script, and then we got farther, just going back to nothing. Uh-oh, timed out. All right, let's try this one more time.
PC load letter. Mother.
Again, back to our PSA. Go watch Office Space if you don't get any of those references.
Yeah, he loses his mind with printer, which any printer can do to you. I don't care what printer it is.
Right. Yeah, there's a client server mismatch, so I'm not sure if we'll get there.
Yeah, it looks like some kind of client server. I mean, if you had the latest greatest like I did on this server, too bad you are out of date. Your client is out of date.
Well, then I blame Brew because that's how this is installed. Of course, if once I get my streaming set up,
yeah.
Well, once I get my studio set up, I'm going to have my Linux machine front and center, and then I'll have the Mac over on the side for the streaming things. Because let's face it, Minecraft just runs better Linux to Linux.
I love that people are trying to help in the chat. I love it. Because like when you're powerless and you can't help troubleshoot, it's so annoying. You're just like, just type. Bah. It's like watching your mom type on it. You're like, just type IP tables dash L. I've done that to my mom. It's not good. Like I remember back in the day, I tried to make it run Linux. It was a bad idea.
I think we caught all the questions in the chat at least. But I would love to point out
Podman worked. Podman worked.
Yeah, exactly. In the last 27 minutes, all of our issues have been related to running Minecraft, not to running anything in Podman.
First, it was Bash, which, like I told you, I was a Bash ninja. I figured that part out. But
you figured out it was broken.
I figured out it was broken. 100%. I knew it in my heart of hearts. I was like, this is not working right. I thought about the Linode firewall too, but I looked, they don't have anything.
Gotcha. So this does, although this blew up in our faces, maybe next time we'll actually try it before we go live. But this makes me think that I'm sorry. Go ahead and if you could repost that VM question. I must have missed it there somewhere. But one of the things I was thinking of was Red Hat actually has 16 licenses for RHEL instances, and different people have virtual machines running on their laptops. Some people have home labs. Some people spend a lot of time on Linode or AWS or DigitalOcean, whatever the case may be. It might be good to do like a mini series. I know I've already committed to a satellite one next year, but it might be good to do what are some good things to do with those 16 subscriptions? And I think a Minecraft server would be a great one. Maybe we'll actually go in and make sure it works before we bring it on air next time. But it might be cool. So if you go out to Twitter, Red Hat RHEL is our handle, hashtag RHEL Presents. It would be great if you just share your ideas, tell us some things that you'd like to run in your home lab. And with the last few seconds, I do want to share the question that we missed, and that was, where's the Podman machine create the VM? So I think this was back during our Mac discussion. So is that using VirtualBox? Is that libvirt? And like I said, I'm pretty sure that's under.
I think it's libvirt, and I think they had to do some patches to libvirt to make the M1 work, and the libvirt stuff is what they were waiting. They were waiting to patch it up. They patched it upstream, but they were waiting to pull it into. They were going to do some one-off fork patches in Brew to like get us through until they patch it upstream and then pull the latest version. Blah blah blah. I think that was the problem, if I remember right.
Perfect. Yeah.
It could have been another question, but I thought it was in relation to CentOS Stream. And so just to clarify, if you're running Podman on CentOS Stream, you don't need to have a VM. It just runs natively. So
Yeah, exactly. You only need the VM on Mac and Windows.
Yeah.
Because containers are Linux.
They are. I got the T-shirt and everything.
Has to be true.
All right, folks. Thank you so much for joining us today, Scott. Thank you for being a part of the show. Brian, did we tease out what we're doing next in 2 weeks?
Yeah, so in 2 weeks we're going to have a big fireside chat with a lot of different people from Red Hat, and we are hopefully going to have a lot of interaction and questions from the audience. So definitely plan on joining us in 2 weeks and bring your questions.
Yeah, I think we might bring McCarty back and just troll him during the fireside chat about why you couldn't get a simple Minecraft server going under Podman.
Yeah, I was gonna say thanks for embarrassing me. I appreciate that.
I given 5 more minutes, I think we could have figured it out. But we
I think
ran
your
out of
client
time
was
in
out
our
of date.
maintenance window, so we're going to have to go through and we're going to have to request a new maintenance window. We're going to have to get it approved. You're going to make sure to use the new cover sheet, Scott, not the old cover sheet, the new cover sheet.
New one. But I did put the cover sheet on it. I did put the new one on there.
Have you seen my stapler? All right, y'all. Before this deteriorates any further, I'm going to call it a day. Join us in 2 weeks for RHEL Fireside Chat. That'll be the last RHEL Presents of the year. Brian, thank you so much. My co-host, Scott, our guest today. Follow him on Twitter at Father Linux. Of course, I am Eric, the IT guy. Hendricks, so join me on Twitter, Mastodon, all the things at IT guy Eric. And until then, we'll see you in 2 weeks.